I never thought a kitchen knife would save my life. It's funny, right? When you're in a maximum security prison, a knife usually means trouble. But for me, it was the first step out of the hole I'd been digging since I was 14. My name's Jack Morales, and before I ever held a chef's knife, I held a switchblade. I grew up in Southside Franklin, where joining the Blood Vultures wasn't a choice, it was survival. My old man walked out when I was 6. My mom worked 2 jobs and still couldn't keep the lights on. By 13, I was running with the gang, boosting cars, selling dope, and thinking I was invincible. At 17, I caught my first charge, aggravated assault. But it was nothing compared to what came later. The night that landed me in prison for 20 years was supposed to be simple. Just a robbery. Quick cash. No one gets hurt. But when you run with wolves, the line between no one gets hurt and somebody dies disappears real fast. I didn't pull the trigger, but I was there when it happened. That made me guilty enough. Prison was everything they say it is. Loud, dirty, and full of eyes that size you up the second you walk in. I learned fast. Either you fight or you fold. I fought. I earned my respect with busted knuckles and broken teeth. I figured that would be my life until I rotted in a cell. Then came kitchen duty. Morale's Officer Denton barked one morning, his voice like gravel. "Congrats, you're cooking now. Try not to poison anyone." I laughed in his face. Me, cook. I could barely make ramen in the free world. But in prison, you don't argue with the guards unless you want to weaken the whole. So, I walked into that kitchen, expecting the worst. That's when I met Mr. Harris. Old guy. Marine turned prison cook. He had these sharp blue eyes that looked straight through you. "You ever hold a knife, kid?" he asked me. I smirked. "Plenty of times." He handed me a chef's knife. "It's not like this. You haven't." I didn't know it then, but that moment was the first time I'd hold a weapon that didn't destroy my life. It would rebuild it. The first day in the kitchen felt like stepping into another world. No screaming inmates, no echoing steel doors, just the hum of industrial ovens, the hiss of steam, and the sharp rhythm of knives on cutting boards. Mr. Harris tossed me an apron. "You're on onions?" I stared at the mountain of them stacked on the counter. "You trying to kill me, old man?" He grinned. "Live through this. You can survive anything." I chopped for hours. My hands blistered. My eyes burned, and every slice came out crooked. The other kitchen guys laughed, except Harris. He just stood behind me, watching. When I finally threw the knife down and cursed, he didn't yell. Didn't even look disappointed. He just said, again. That word stuck with me. By the 3rd day, my cuts were cleaner. By the 7th, I was fast enough that the others stopped laughing. And one night, while I was wiping down the counters, Harris slid a plate in front of me. It was simple. Just roast chicken with garlic and herbs. But in prison, food was slop. This smelled like heaven. "You made this?" I asked. He nodded. "Eat." One bite, and I swear it was like I remembered what living felt like. I hadn't tasted real food in years, and here was this old man feeding me like I wasn't just another inmate number. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. Harris didn't answer right away, just leaned on the counter and said, "Because somebody once did it for me." That was it. No explanation, no details. Just a riddle hanging in the air. The next day I came back early. I didn't know why. Maybe because the kitchen was the only place that didn't feel like prison. Maybe because Harris was the first person in years who looked at me like I was more than what I'd done. But that's when trouble came knocking. Big Rico, a shot caller for the Blood Vultures, cornered me in the yard. "Heard you're in the kitchen now," he said, grinning like a wolf. "Good. We need a man on the inside." Just like that, I realized cooking might get me killed. Big Rico's shadow fell over me like a storm cloud. In prison, you don't say no to a shot caller, not unless you've got a death wish. "What do you need?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Rico grinned. "Simple. We got a shipment coming in."
You sneak a little something through the kitchen.
"You help us. We protect you. You refuse." He tapped his fingers against his throat and smirked. That night, I couldn't sleep. My whole life I'd bled for the gang, but for the first time, I didn't want to. The kitchen, Harris, it felt like my one shot at something better. But if I turned on Rico, I was done. The next day, Harris noticed the dark circles under my eyes. "You look like a man wrestling with his own shadow," he said. I laughed bitterly. "Wouldn't understand." Harris just raised an eyebrow. May. So I told him, not everything, just enough. He didn't flinch, didn't judge. He just stared at me for a long time and said, "When I was in Nam, I saw men face choices like that every day. Most of them didn't make it. You know who did? The ones who picked a fight worth bleeding for." I frowned. "Are you saying I should cross Rico?" "I'm saying," Harris leaned in close, his voice low, "you decide who you want to be, not him." That night, I made my choice. When Rico came to me again in the yard, I said, "I'm out." For a second, I thought he'd slit my throat right there. But he just smiled, that cold, slow smile that made my stomach turn. "You'll regret that, Morales." 2 days later, I walked into the kitchen and found my station trashed, knives missing, food spilled everywhere. Harris didn't ask who did it. He just handed me a mop. "Clean it up," he said. I stared at him. "That's it? You're not going to say anything?" He looked me dead in the eye. "If you want this, kid, you're going to have to earn it. Every damn day." And for the first time in my life, I realized someone actually believed I could. The next week was hell. Word travels fast in prison, and turning down Rico was like spitting in the devil's face. My food tray accidentally got dumped. My bunk got tossed. I woke up one night to find my shoes slashed. But the worst came in the yard. Rico's enforcer, a mountain of a man named Skull, cornered me by the bleachers. "You think you're better than us now, Morales?" His fist hit my gut like a sledgehammer. I doubled over, gasping for air. He didn't stop. When I staggered into the kitchen later, bruised and bleeding, Harris didn't say a word. He just handed me a loaf of bread and a serrated knife. "What the hell am I supposed to do with this?" I snapped. "Slice it," he said. "I'm bleeding. Slice it anyway." I stared at him, but he didn't budge. So I started cutting, every movement shaky. My knuckles ached, blood oozed from my lip, but I kept going. When I finished, the slices were uneven and ugly. I slammed the knife down. "Happy?" Harris inspected them, then looked me dead in the eye. "You don't quit just because it hurts. You keep cutting until it's done. You hear me?" I didn't answer. He leaned closer. "Rico can beat you. He can starve you, but he can't stop you from showing up here and slicing bread straighter than you did yesterday. That's how you win, kid. One cut at a time." I don't know why, but something about that hit me harder than Skull's fists. Maybe because, for once, I had a fight I actually wanted to win. The next morning, I was back in the kitchen at 5 a.m. Harris didn't say anything, just slid me a bag of onions and nodded. That's how it went for weeks. Beatings in the yard, lessons in the kitchen. And with every slice, every stir of the pot, I felt the chains of my old life loosening just a little. But Rico wasn't done with me yet. In his next move, nearly burned the whole kitchen down. It was a Tuesday morning when it happened. I was dicing carrots when the fire alarm shrieked. Smoke poured from the pantry like a living thing. Harris bolted past me, shouting, "Get the extinguishers!" When I yanked the door open, I saw it. A pile of rags soaked in oil, all set ablaze. Sabotage. I didn't need to guess who was behind it. I grabbed the extinguisher and fought the flames while Harris barked orders at the other inmates. By the time the guards rushed in, the fire was out, but the pantry was trashed, burned shelves, charred food, and the acrid stench of smoke clinging to everything. The warden wasn't happy. "One more incident like this," he snarled, "and the kitchen's shut down for good. No more work program." That hit me harder than I expected. The kitchen was the only thing keeping me from drowning. Losing it, that was like losing air. That night, Rico came swaggering by my cell. He grinned through the bars. "How's that fancy kitchen life treating you now, Morales?" I wanted to tear him apart. Instead, I clenched my fists and stayed quiet. Harris's words echoed in my head, one cut at a time. The next day, I came to the kitchen early. Harris was already there, sipping his coffee like nothing had happened. "You knew it was him," I said. "Of course," Harris replied. "But knowing and proving are two different things." "So what now? We just let him burn the place down?" Harris smiled faintly. "Oh, now you learn how to cook under pressure." He handed me a bag of flour and a cracked recipe book. "You ever made bread from scratch?" I stared at him. "After what happened, you want me to bake?" "Exactly," he said. "Because if you can make something rise in a place like this, there's nothing they can do to stop you." And for the first time, I realized Harris wasn't just teaching me how to cook. He was teaching me how to survive. The first loaf I baked was a disaster. Looked more like a rock than bread. Dense, burnt on the outside, raw inside. Harris just nodded. "Everyone starts somewhere," he said. Where's at your wall or well? So I did, day after day. I mixed, kneaded, and waited for the dough to rise. Every failure stung like a punch, but with Harris's steady guidance, I began to understand the rhythm, the patience, the care. Cooking became my escape and my battleground. In a place built to break men, I was learning to build something. But Rico wasn't done testing me. One afternoon, he cornered me by the showers. "You're slipping, Morales. It's gonna lose your spot in the kitchen if you're not careful." I shook my head. "I'm good." He leaned in, voice low. "Then maybe you want to prove it. Help me out one last time. Smuggle some goods in through the kitchen deliveries." I looked him dead in the eye. "No," he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You sure about that? Because I'm done playing nice?" That night I found a note slipped under my cell door. "We're watching you." Fear settled in my gut, but so did something else, a quiet fire. Thank you for watching this far. If you are enjoying the video, please subscribe. I wasn't going back. Not to that life. Not to that gang. Harris noticed the change. "You're ready for the next step," he said, sliding me a knife sharper than any I'd held before. Next step? Time to start cooking for more than just survival. Months turned into years, but every day in the kitchen chipped away at the man I used to be. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was learning, started dreaming about what life could be after prison, a thought so foreign it almost scared me. Harris became more than a teacher. He was a guide, a father figure I never had. One afternoon, as we prepped for dinner service, he asked me, "Ever thought about what you want when you get out?" I laughed bitterly. "Free. That's all I want." He shook his head. "No, I mean after that. What do you want to do with your freedom?" I stared at the chopping board. "I don't know. Maybe open a restaurant. Maybe open a restaurant. Never thought I'd say that." He smiled. "Good. You'll need a plan. And you're going to need to prove you're more than your past." That's when he pulled out an application for the prison's culinary competition, a statewide challenge for inmates. "Win this, and you'll get a shot at a culinary scholarship outside. You win?" It felt like the first real chance I'd had in years. But Rico and his crew weren't about to let me slip away that easy. Thought of threats turned into fights. Got jumped in the yard, beaten so bad the med team kept me overnight. Still, every time I wanted to quit, Harris was there with a plate of food and a quiet word. "Remember," he'd say, "you're not just cooking for yourself anymore. You're cooking for the man you want to be." When competition day came, I was ready. Sweat dripped down my forehead, hands steady as I plated my signature dish. Roasted chicken with garlic herb sauce. The one Harris had made for me on my first day. As the judges tasted my food, I saw Harris in the corner nodding. That moment I wasn't Jack the inmate, I was Jack the chef. The tension in the dining hall was thick enough to cut with a knife. Every inmate, chef was sweating under the judge's cold stares, but I kept my focus on the plate in front of me. Roasted chicken, garlic herb sauce, perfectly roasted vegetables, simple, honest food that reminded me of Harris's kindness. I laid it down carefully, trying not to betray the whirlwind inside me. The head judge, a grizzled chef with scars on his hands, leaned in and took a bite. His eyes flicked up to me, and for a second, I thought he was going to spit it out. But then, slowly, a smile cracked across his face. "This is good," he said. "Better than good. It tells a story." I swallowed hard. Storytelling through food. I'd never thought of cooking like that. But there it was, my story on a plate. Pain, hope, and change. When the winner was announced, my heart pounded so loud I thought the whole room could hear it. Jack Morales. Do-do-do! The The room erupted in applause. Well, as much applause as you get in a prison dining hall. "Does!" Harris caught my eye, nodding with pride. That night in my cell, I held the trophy tight. It wasn't just a prize, it was proof. Proof that I could rewrite my story. And it was just the beginning. Winning the competition changed everything, but freedom was still years away. Prison walls don't just cage your body, they trap your mind, your hope, your sense of self. After the announcement, I found myself in the small visiting room, paper in hand. An acceptance letter for a culinary scholarship at a community college, conditional on my release. "This is your chance," Jack Harris said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "Don't let the past drag you back." I nodded, but doubts crept in. How do you walk out of prison and not fall back into the life you spent decades running from? How do you rebuild when everyone outside sees you as a convict? In the yard, my old crew still kept tabs, some whispered warnings. Others offered false friendship. I learned fast that loyalty is a currency no one spends lightly in prison. Yet in the kitchen, I found something real, a skill, a passion, a purpose. I started teaching younger inmates what Harris taught me, little cooking lessons between shifts. It's watching their eyes light up when they made something edible. It reminded me why I fought so hard to change. But when I looked in the mirror, I didn't just see an ex-gang member or an inmate. I saw a man with a chance, and that chance was worth fighting for. The moment the gates clanged open, I swallowed hard. Freedom tasted different than I expected. Sharp, heavy, like the weight of all the years I lost. Outside, the air smelled different, fresher, but strange. I didn't know where to look first. The city skyline was the same, but I was a stranger in my own world. My scholarship to the community college was a lifeline, but stepping into that classroom was terrifying. I was the guy everyone whispered about, the ex-con with a past nobody wanted to touch. One day, the instructor asked me to present my favorite recipe. My heart pounded. I thought about Harris, about the kitchen battles, about every cut and slice that brought me here. I spoke honestly this dish. It's more than food to me. It's hope. It's survival. It's the first time I believed I could change. Some students nodded, others just stared. But for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Outside class, the old temptations lurked. Old friends calling, the pull of easy money, the weight of my own doubts. But every time I felt like slipping, I remembered Harris's words. One cut at a time. This was my new fight. And this time, I wasn't backing down. The first real test came sooner than I expected. One night, I got a call from an old friend, Tito, a guy who'd been with the gang since day one. "Jack, you owe us. Come through tonight." I stared at the phone, heart pounding. It was the voice of my past, pulling me back into the shadows. I thought about the fights in the yard, the fire in the kitchen, the nights Harris stayed up teaching me to knead dough instead of knuckles. "No, Tito," I said, voice steady. "I'm done." He laughed cold. "You think you can just walk away? You're either with us or against us?" That night, I sat in my tiny apartment kitchen, hands trembling over a mixing bowl. I was alone, but I wasn't. My neighbor, Maria, a retired chef who volunteered at the community center, knocked softly. "Need some company?" I nodded, grateful. Maria became my mentor outside prison, showing me how to turn recipes into business plans, how to read customers like a menu, and how to believe in myself. At the college, a handful of classmates, impressed by my story, offered help, tutoring, introductions to local restaurants, even invitations to community cook-offs. For the first time, I realized I wasn't fighting alone. But the shadows still waited. One evening, as I locked up after a late shift, a figure stepped out of the darkness. "Tito, last chance, Jack." I squared my shoulders. No more chances. The street was cold and empty when Tito stepped closer, his eyes dark with challenge. "Last chance, Jack," he hissed, fists clenched. I didn't flinch. I met his glare and said, "No more chances." For a heartbeat, the world felt like it was holding its breath. Then Tito sneered, "You'll regret this." But I didn't back down. Years locked inside had taught me one thing. Fear is a liar, and survival means choosing your own path. That night, as I walked away from the alley, I felt something shift inside. I wasn't the scared kid hiding behind gang loyalty anymore. It was Jack Morales, chef, survivor, man with a future. Back in my tiny kitchen, I pulled out my battered recipe notebook and traced the inked words with calloused fingers. Harris's voice echoed, one cut at a time. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The past would always be there, lurking in shadows, tempting me to stumble. But I also knew I had a new family, the friends who believed in me, the mentors who guided me, and the kitchen that transformed me. I wasn't just cooking meals. I was cooking a new life. And this time, I was the one holding the knife. The scholarship was just the start. Soon, I found myself interning at a local restaurant, a bustling kitchen full of fire and fury, where every second counted. It was nothing like the prison kitchen. Here I wasn't just chopping vegetables. I was part of a team, a family, that pushed me to my limits. But the hustle came with its own battles. Whispers followed me, ex-con, former gang member. Some looked at me with suspicion, others with pity. One night, the head chef called me out in front of the staff. "Jack, why should we trust a guy with your history?" My heart pounded, but I squared my shoulders. Because I've been through hell and back, and I'm still standing. Because I'm ready to work harder than anyone here. There was a long pause. Then the chef nodded slowly. "All right, Morales, show me what you've got." That was the moment I realized that respect isn't given, it's earned, plate by plate, shift by shift. Outside the kitchen, the old life still whispered. A text from an unknown number, shadow near my apartment. But with every dish I plated, every smile from a satisfied customer, the pull of the past weakened. I was building something real, something worth fighting for. The night I got the call from the city's top food festival was surreal. It wanted me to compete, to showcase my dishes on a stage I'd only dreamed of. For a moment, all the years of struggle, pain, and sweat felt worth it. I was finally being recognized not as an ex-gang member, but as Jack, the chef. But excitement quickly turned to anxiety. The spotlight brought back memories I couldn't shake. The faces of people I'd hurt, the mistakes I'd made that landed me here in the first place. One evening, as I prepared my signature dish, my phone buzzed. A message from an old gang associate. "You don't belong here. Remember who you are." I froze. The knife slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor. Harris, who was visiting, saw the look on my face. "It's not your past that defines you, Jack. It's what you do next." I swallowed hard, wiping away sweat and doubt. The festival was a test, not just of skill, but of heart. And when I plated my dish, I put everything on the line. My story, my hope, my fight to rise. The crowd erupted in applause. For the first time, I felt truly free, not from my past, but from its hold on me. The applause from the festival was still ringing in my ears when I realized something bigger was happening. This wasn't just about me, it was about every kid stuck in a cycle they couldn't see a way out of. I started volunteering at youth centers, sharing my story, teaching cooking classes for at-risk teens. Watching their eyes light up as they learned to chop an onion or bake bread, it was the same spark Harris ignited in me years ago. One afternoon, a kid named Marcus asked, "How did you do it? How did you get out?" I looked at him and said, "One cut at a time. It's not about being perfect. It's about showing up every day and trying." Word spread, and soon, local chefs and community leaders invited me to speak at events. My past was no longer a chain, but a bridge, connecting me to people who wanted change, who believed in second chances. I even opened a small cafe, Second Chances, where former inmates and teens from tough neighborhoods could learn culinary skills and find a safe space. It wasn't easy. Old fears and doubts still whispered, but every time they did, I remembered Harris's lessons, patience, perseverance, and the power of a steady hand. From a kid trapped in a gang, to an inmate fighting for survival, to a chef shaping futures, I'd come a long way. And the journey wasn't over. Success came faster than I expected. Second Chances was thriving. The cafe packed every night with hopeful faces and familiar stories. I'd built more than a business, I'd built a community. But with success came new challenges. Investors wanted changes, flashier menus, pricier ingredients, a brand that looked less rough around the edges. They didn't understand what this place meant. One evening, during a heated meeting, an investor said, "Jack, you need to appeal to a different crowd. This isn't just a cafe, it's a business." I looked him dead in the eye. "This is more than a business, it's a lifeline. It's for people like me. not everyone agreed. Some partners pulled out, and I was left wondering if I could keep the cafe and my vision alive. At the same time, old friends from my past reached out, some genuinely wanting to reconnect, others with less honest intentions. I had to learn to say no, to protect what I'd built without losing where I came from. Every day was a balancing act between growth and integrity, ambition and authenticity. But no matter how high the flames rose, I remembered one thing. Steady hands shape the fire. They don't let it consume you. It started with a phone call. The cafe's kitchen caught fire late one night, an electrical fault, they said, but the damage was devastating. Flames licked the walls, smoke ruined the equipment, and the neighborhood lost its safe space. Standing outside, watching the firefighters do their work, I felt a hollow ache. Months of sweat, blood, and hope gone in smoke. The media swarmed the next day. Some stories were sympathetic. Others questioned if I was ready to run a business. Old rumors resurfaced, whispers of my past, mixing with doubts about my future. For a moment, I wanted to quit, to fold like I had so many times before. But then Maria, the mentor who never gave up on me, showed up with a smile and a toolbox. "We rebuild," she said simply. The community rallied too. Former students, neighbors, local chefs, all offered help, donations, and hands. Rebuilding wasn't just about bricks and mortar. It was about resilience. I stayed up nights, coordinating repairs, planning new menus, and reminding myself why I started. That fire tried to take everything, but it only made the fire within burn stronger. The day we reopened, second chances felt like a rebirth. The fresh paint gleamed under the morning sun, and the scent of coffee and fresh bread filled the air once again. As I unlocked the door, I thought about every moment that brought me here. The pain, the fights, the nights in prison, and the friendships forged over kneading dough. The crowd that gathered wasn't just customers. It was a family, former inmates, local kids, chefs, and neighbors, all standing together, proving that no setback could break us. I took the microphone for the reopening speech, voice steady despite the flood of emotions. This cafe is more than a business. It's a symbol of what's possible when we refuse to give up. My past didn't define me, my choices did. And today we choose hope. Tears glistened in eyes around me. From a broken boy in the streets to a prisoner finding light in the darkest places, to a chef leading a community, my journey wasn't just mine anymore. It was a story of redemption, resilience, and the power of one steady hand to shape a new life. And this was only the beginning. Word about second chances spread like wildfire. News outlets picked up my story. Gang member turned award-winning chef, a symbol of hope and transformation. Invitations followed, speaking gigs at schools, community centers, even a feature on a local TV show. Suddenly, I wasn't just cooking for a small crowd, I was speaking to thousands, sharing my journey and the lessons I'd learned. One evening, after a talk at a youth shelter, a young woman approached me. "I've been in and out of trouble all my life. Hearing your story gave me hope." Her words hit me harder than any accolade. This was the real impact, the chance to change lives beyond the kitchen. But with this visibility came new pressures. Expectations rose, and every misstep felt magnified. Still, I kept reminding myself why I started, to give others a chance to rewrite their stories just like I did. Through interviews, workshops, and mentoring, I found purpose beyond cooking, a mission to ignite change where it was needed most. The cafe was my foundation, but my reach was growing. With every story I shared, I found strength to keep moving forward. The bright lights of the media and the constant buzz of public attention were nothing like the quiet focus of the kitchen I loved. Suddenly, every word I said, every action I took, was under scrutiny. Interviews turned into demands. Invitations turned into expectations. The story I thought was mine to tell felt like it belonged to everyone. One afternoon, after a grueling panel discussion about criminal justice reform, I sat alone in a cafe, exhausted and overwhelmed. Maria called me, sensing my struggle. "Jack, remember why you started? It's not about the applause, it's about the impact." Her words grounded me. I realized I needed to carve out space for myself, to grow without losing the man I'd fought so hard to become. I recommitted to the kitchen, to teaching, and to the cafe, where the work was real, tangible and deeply personal. The spotlight would come and go, but the mission remained: to be a steady hand in a world that desperately needed one. And that was enough. Sitting in the quiet corner of the cafe after the dinner rush, I let myself breathe. The clatter of plates, the murmur of conversations, it all felt like a heartbeat, steady and strong. I thought back to the kid I used to be, the scared boy running with a gang, caught in a cycle of violence and despair. Prison was my darkest chapter, but it also became the turning point. Harris's patience, the kitchen's discipline, the second chances offered by strangers, they shaped me into who I am now. Not perfect, but resilient. Not defined by my past, but empowered by my choices. The road ahead is long, and I know there will be obstacles. Old ghosts will try to pull me back, and the world will test my resolve. But I've learned that change isn't a destination, it's a daily decision. One cut at a time, one choice at a time. And as long as I keep moving forward, I'm free. The future isn't written yet, but I'm ready to write it, with steady hands and an open heart. The cafe was no longer just a place to eat, it was a beacon of hope. But I wanted more. I wanted to create a ripple that could change more lives, just like mine had been changed. I started partnering with local nonprofits, organizing culinary workshops for incarcerated youth and recently released inmates. The goal was simple: give them tools to build a life, not just survive one. One afternoon, a young man named Eli approached me after a class. "I never thought cooking could save me," he said, "but it's giving me something to believe in." That belief, that spark, was everything. I began dreaming bigger. A culinary school dedicated to second chances, scholarships for those with troubled pasts, a network of support that stretched far beyond my cafe's walls. It wasn't just about food anymore. It was about empowerment, community, and rewriting the story society often wrote for people like us. I wasn't just an ex-gang member or an inmate turned chef. I was a mentor, a leader, a symbol that transformation was possible. And with every life I touched, my legacy grew, not in awards or accolades, but in hope. It's strange, really. Prison, this place so many see as a dead end, became the crucible where I found myself. Behind those steel bars, I wasn't just surviving. The heat of the prison kitchen, the battles over stolen ingredients, the late nights perfecting recipes under flickering lights, those moments taught me patience, discipline, and hope. Harris wasn't just my mentor, he was my lifeline. He showed me that even in the darkest place, a man can rebuild his soul, one cut, one dish, one choice at a time. Sure, prison was harsh. It forced me to face my demons, the mistakes that led me there, and the weight of my past. But it also gave me a chance, a raw, unpolished chance to change. When I finally walked out, I carried that kitchen fire with me. The lessons, the friendships, the small victories, they became the foundation of my new life. And every time I teach someone new behind bars or out in the world, I'm reminded transformation is possible, even when it seems impossible, because sometimes the darkest places hold the brightest sparks.